So welcome everybody to today's webinar with in collaboration with Radian AI, our partners in Australia. Today we'll be focusing on the power of accelerating clinical trial design using artificial intelligence, using the newest technologies that are available on the market and that are always emerging. Today, we'll be focusing on the clinical trial design process and how to accelerate them. Specifically, the agenda looks like this. I'll be introducing the expert.ai company for about a couple of minutes, just for you to have an idea of what the company does, what its history is, a couple of numbers about the company. Then we'll dive into the use case at hand. So the clinical trials innovation, why we need to innovate the clinical trial design processes. Then we'll jump directly into a live demonstration of the solution that we have implemented and that we have deployed to actually showcase the assumptions that we made in the clinical trials innovation optimization processes step. And then we'll have a short time, 10-15 minutes, for any questions that may arise during the presentation. So about expert.ai, the company was founded in Modena in 1989 and has grown from a small Italian company to a world-renowned technology hub. Expert.ai operates with a global mindset, has a presence in 6 countries all over the world with dedicated AI labs, employs a team of more than 200 professionals, including around 130 AI and data experts, and boasts a client base that includes leading corporations, governments, public agencies across North America and Europe. The company also features and boasts some key market differentiators, is an expert, as the name already tells, in composite AI, with a strong emphasis on language understanding and explainability, deploys solutions and has been deploying solutions that achieve over 90% accuracy in real-world use cases while ensuring scalability and full data protection, and was recognized as a global leader in document mining and analytics by both Gartner and Forrester. At expert.ai, we're not just building technology, however, we're building the AI foundation for better decisions, faster research, and ultimately better patient outcomes. At the core of our approach is our proprietary hybrid AI technology, which blends machine learning with symbolic reasoning, which offers in turn higher accuracy, lower total cost of ownership, and faster return of investment. We don't believe at expert.ai that there is such a thing as one-size-fits-all AI. That's why our solutions are all tailored and custom tailored, engineered specifically to meet complex business requirements, whether that's clinical trial optimization, regulatory intelligence, or pharmacovigilance. Expert.ai also boasts a proven track record of successfully deployed AI solutions for pharma and healthcare organizations, thanks to our deep knowledge of life sciences processes and workflows, which makes us trustworthy partners for your solution implementation. As I was saying, we deliver proven enterprise AI solutions that drive measurable business value across industries, and especially in the pharma and healthcare industry, where precision, explainability, compliance are non-negotiables. Here you can see a couple of numbers from our past and present projects, and a bit of the knowledge that we have accrued over the time. And this is what our focus in pharma and healthcare is all about. It's AI solutions that address high impact use cases, such as clinical trial optimization, drug discovery and repurposing, regulatory compliance, we try to bring a deep commitment to innovation and a passion for helping life sciences organizations transform how they leverage data to improve outcomes. However, numbers are nothing without a show of what our use cases that we have implemented are. Some of them are here. I'm sharing them with you. For example, the regulatory submissions automation project and pipeline was successfully developed for some clients, and it achieved more than 40% efficiency gains on anticipated checks. It has successfully identified more than 85% of inconsistent data. And so it helps companies identify when a regulatory submission process was going according to plan or needed amending, for example. We also have deployed IP protection automation projects and solutions that extracted meaningful information from patents, articles, trials, and tried to align those information to try and find supporting or refuting evidence in the monitored content. And then we also have deployed solutions for patient reports outcome analysis. As you know, patient-reported analysis is one of the trickiest use cases, with a linguistic variance that is very high and that needs to be, of course, accounted for in the automation of the processes. However, I'd like to then dive deeply into the use case that we'll be talking about today, the real-world challenges facing clinical trial design. We know that bringing a new drug from the lab to the market is not only time-intensive, it often takes 8 to 12 years, but it is also enormously expensive. The average cost of development now exceeds $2.5 billion, and the number continues to rise. One of the most critical bottlenecks in this process is patient recruitment and retention. And despite best efforts in the US alone, for example, over 80% of clinical trials fail to meet their targeted enrollment goals. And of those who do enroll, nearly 30% drop out before the trial even concludes. What is even more striking is that about 90% of clinical trials are terminated altogether due to recruitment issues. The financial consequences of these delays and failures are staggering. A failed trial due to insufficient enrollment can cost anywhere between $800 million and $1.4 billion. And for ongoing trials, every day of delay can mean a loss in revenue ranging from $600,000 to $8 million, depending, of course, on the market potential of the drug. So what happens when recruitment falters? Budgets get overrun, timelines are extended, and in the worst cases, teams are left without the ability to analyze the drug's effectiveness, which delays critical therapies from reaching patients. These are unjust logistical problems. They're strategic risks, and solving them requires smarter, faster, more targeted trial design powered by the right data and technology. And this is where our solution comes in handy. I'd like to start, before introducing the solution per se, I'd like to start with a case study that we will be showcasing today. We will begin with a real-world case study demonstrating the practical impact of AI-driven optimization in clinical trial design. So let's imagine we are a clinical trial design and planning group. We are currently developing a promising and investigational antibody drug conjugate that we will call SNEAI-001, aimed at treating triple-negative breast cancer, or in short, TNBC. As many of you know, TNBC is a particularly aggressive form of breast cancer with limited targeted therapies available. This makes trial design not just important, but critical. Any inefficiencies or bias could slow down development or compromise patient safety. The key objective in this case was to verify whether the trial design, specifically the eligibility criteria and study parameters, are both evidence-based and aligned with the latest real-world and clinical trial data. To this end, we leveraged a massive dataset, including more than 28 million Medline publications, more than 900,000 clinical trials globally, and a comprehensive database of more than 81,000 drug profiles. We developed, thanks also to Springer Nature, an engine that is behind the whole analysis that we called Bridge, blending real-world insights and data for global evidence. Bridge uses and leverages hybrid AI to capture, structure, connect real-world data, making it usable for evidence-based trial planning. The expected outcomes of this approach were threefold. One, benchmarking the drug trial design against existing real-world data and other similar trials. We wanted to enhance trial parameters by aligning them with verified evidence from literature and trial repositories. And then we tried to improve patient stratification, helping to define subpopulations more precisely for targeted inclusion. Ultimately, this method is about de-risking trial design and making smarter, faster, and more informed decisions that can directly impact both study efficiency and patient outcomes. To support the case study and broader trial design challenges, let's take a closer look at the Bridge solution, the platform that we have just about now introduced. What makes Bridge effective is the strength of its data and its technology. First, the data. Bridge leverages comprehensive, near real-time data coverage, which includes not only millions of peer-reviewed publications in clinical trials, but also continuously updated information, which is refreshed daily, updated daily, which ensures decisions are made using the most current evidence available. It's not just about volume, though. It's also about quality and structure. Bridge uses domain-focused knowledge models, which are trained on expert-reviewed sources, so the insights actually reflect medical context and relevance. And to make this vast dataset usable, of course, Bridge applies data standardization and linking, enabling consistent comparison across trials, drugs, endpoints, and patient populations, of course. But then we also have the technology. Bridge is built on a neuro-symbolic AI framework. This hybrid approach blends AI with rule-based reasoning, offering greater accuracy and explainability, which is a key factor, which is essential in regulated high-stakes domain like clinical research. The system is also a multi-agent architecture, which means it could handle multiple analytical workflows simultaneously. It scales quickly while maintaining precision and responsiveness. Together, these capabilities allow Bridge to go beyond automation. It really becomes, in my opinion, a true decision support system, which helps teams optimize trial design through evidence-driven insights that are timely, traceable, and ultimately actionable. So I was talking about the data first. This is basically the data. What you're seeing is a screenshot from the user experience of the database, the vast database that we have available for our data. It can be researched, of course, but this is just to show and actually justify that the data was not just collected for the experiment that we will be seeing today, that for the solution that I'll be showcasing today, the data is there and the data is processed. So the data is structured, is standardized, linked, and the data is usable. Here you can see that for the triple negative breast cancer landscape, we started by trying to narrow down the document magnitude from the biggest to the smallest one, which is the most relevant, of course. We started by looking at any publication, real world publication that was about cancer. As you can see in the top right corner, we had about more than 5.5 million documents retrieved from the database. This was way too much for our use case. So we tried to narrow down the scope of the data, and we tried to find real world publications about breast cancer. Publication about breast cancer yielded a better result in numbers, in magnitude, because we had a little less than 500,000 documents, which was still a large number of documents. So we tried to find out how many documents were about cancer, but specifically triple negative breast cancer. And since our documents, as I was saying, are semantically processed, so they are structured and they are linked and standardized, we know that this is not just a keyword research on the database. And we know that we have now found more than 20,000 documents about triple negative breast cancer that we then used as database for the whole bridge solution. So this was about it for the introduction. I think that we might just go to the if Andrew agrees, we can go directly to the live demo of the solution, right?
Yep, that'd be fine.
Okay, just let me share my screen here. Okay, share. Okay. Can you see my screen? Is everything okay?
Yep, it's all fine.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. So this is the land page for the bridge solution, which is in part a conversational UI, and this is to make the experience more enjoyable, more user-friendly altogether. The platform is a way to explore and gain insights, as I was saying, on real-world data and other clinical trials. And instead of doing that using keywords or clicking buttons or filling in dialog boxes, we wanted to make it more user-friendly. And that's why we developed a conversational UI to be used and to be enjoyed, of course. So let's start with a question. As I introduced earlier on, I said that we are a research group. We're currently developing an antibody drug conjugate for treating triple negative breast cancer. So my first question will be to actually identify what real-world publications are there related to triple negative breast cancer. So identify real-world publications.
Nicola, we could just see the iceberg. I think it must be your screensaver.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I thought that I was sharing the right screen. There we are. Yeah, you're right. I was just sharing with, as I was saying, I have too many monitors, so I was sharing the wrong screen. So this is the user interface as it appears when you first land on it. So as I was saying, this is a conversational user interface. So we can just type in questions to start retrieving data and gaining more insights. So my first question will be identify real world publications related to triple negative breast cancer. Let's see if the instead of using the whole expanded expression, it can also handle this one. So we'll just basically send the query that we have just asked the system, and the system fires up. The system fires up with a series of agents that try to first identify whether my request is in scope, whether my intent is in scope with the application. Should it not be in scope, the system handles the response, of course, gracefully. But seeing that these request was, of course, in scope, because this is a clinical insight solution, we do get an answer. And the answer is a summary of the most relevant real-world publications coming from Medline and clinical trials and the data that we have introduced earlier on, and is a general overview on the documents with a narrated summary. And then we have the most relevant documents that can also be explored. For example, we see that we have a summary of full-length articles. So we have generated a summary of the full-length article, but we also have a more tabular format with any metadata. And be mindful that metadata is not just metadata that was harvested from the Medline platform. It is also metadata that was computed specifically through our very own pipelines and algorithms. For example, we know that the triple negative, the disease that is mentioned in this article, is a disease stage that is now metastatic. We know the maximum age that here is represented as 100, meaning that there is no real mention of the maximum or minimum age in the article, so there is no indication of that. We have the gender of the study, so females were taken into consideration for this study. We can peruse these documents at our own will, and we will see that we have different parameters that have been retrieved depending on, of course, on what the content of the article is. For example, you see here now we have a different parameter. We have the ECOG scale more or equal to 2 that was not mentioned in the first article. This is a very quick entry point into the data that we have collected and used to identify any real insights into the clinical trial world. So now that I have seen that we have what data we have, I'm interested in understanding what the most common treatments for triple negative breast cancer are and what treatments have been discussed in real world publications. So I will be asking, what are the common treatments for TNBC in the real world setting? So what are the common treatments for TNBC in the real world setting? Again, the agents fire up, they start analyzing the question. Once they understand what I'm trying to ask, they then perform entity extraction, which means they try to understand what my query is about. And then once they have retrieved the documents, they do narrate again an answer like they did here, for example. They will be summarizing what the most common treatments for TNBC are in the real world setting. Here you can see. And then also retrieving the most relevant documents, which are different from the first ones, because my query was different. So I'm interested in something different, and there will be different documents. So now I can have a general overview on the most common treatments. For example, sacituzumab govitecan, which is an antibody drug conjugate. We know that in triple negative breast cancer, we also use immune checkpoint inhibitors, and then we use chemotherapy agents like any other agents like carboplatin, capecitabine, taxanes, and so on and so forth. Again, the documents can all be browsed, their summary, their study parameters, and this is a general overview for me to understand at a glance what the most interesting treatments are. I see that from my very own perspective, sacituzumab govitecan is quite of interest. I have here a PDF version of the trial that we have been designing. So it's a trial for also a novel antibody drug conjugate, which is an antibody drug conjugate like sacituzumab govitecan, and that is something that I'm interested in. Let's see whether I can find more insights about and try to compare my very own design trial with other trials. What I'm trying to ask here, to ask the system, is to actually give a more detailed overview of the data. Okay, not just a narrated response that is very well. It's all very well. It's easy for us to read the narrated response, but what I want is something more structured so that I can identify maybe one or two articles that I'm most interested in, that are likely most similar to mine, and that I can use to accelerate my trial design. So what I'm now asking the system is to extract study parameters. So any metadata that we have, be they from Medline or computed and inferenced via our own algorithms, study parameters from studies related to sacituzumab govitecan, because that's the drug that we're interested in. It's an antibody drug conjugate, just like our own, and some summarize in a table, so that this is the way that I can have a more specific overview. As you can see, again, it identifies the intent, it extracts the entities, so what drug it is about, and what we want the final response to be shown. Of course, this answer might take a bit longer because it's not just retrieving the documents, it is also scanning through the documents and trying to create a human readable table, so a human readable format for us to optimize the research that we are carrying out. As you can see here, we have the table completed. It did not take so long, actually. It's a quick system because data, of course, are already structured from our database. We see that we have many PubMed IDs, so real-world publications, with other fields of interest. So we have the title of the article, what interventions were used. Of course, here I'm expecting to only see sacituzumab govitecan because it's the one that I asked about. What countries the articles mention, and then other study parameters such as inclusion criteria, what endpoints were measured, what outcome results were actually measured. Let's try to look at the first one, for example. So here you see that we have the data that you also have in a table, we also have it here in this nifty UI. I see that there is interesting data, the breast surgical plan, so there is no surgery planned. The disease is at a metastatic stage, which is interesting, although our very own antibody drug conjugate is trying to be used at an early disease stage. So this information is not the most interesting to me. However, I know that there is this very article that is of interest because I have analyzed them all. I have looked at them, and I see, for example, that the different TNM stages are actually somewhat in line with my very own trial. So I see that the tumor stage ranges from T1 to T3. I see that the metastasis stage is M0 and M1, and I see that the lymph node stage is N0, N plus. And this is of interest because this is in line somewhat, of course, with my very own clinical trial, as you can see here. So these are my TNM stages. So what I want to do here is to compare the two simply so that we can see all the metadata, all the parameters, study parameters, inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, and see how they align so that we can see whether our trial design is evidence-based and how my trial design can be accelerated. So I can ask the system to compare them for me and ask to compare design trial SNEAI 001 with my very own PMID. So the article from PubMed. So, okay, the intent, of course, is something different now. So I'm not asking to retrieve unknown documents from my database, but I'm sorry, but I'm asking the system to compare two specific documents by their ID and providing me with a comparison. And to do that, we see that we have the two documents, which are, of course, the most relevant documents because I've asked for two. And then we have a link to a UI, a dedicated UI for comparison. And this is the landing point, the actual landing point of the whole solution. So we have the comparison between my two requested documents. So we have the Znetumab Atacan, my design, my trial drug and therapy, and the one that I have asked the system to show me. And we see that we have comparison which are very visible. We have any overlaps and matches computed and similarities computed automatically by the system. And then we see how they overlap and how they match one with the other. We have them all listed, the different fields are listed here, and it's very easy to understand that, for example, age is completely overlapping because my clinical trial recruited patients starting from 18 until 60, which is completely included, of course, in the PubMed article, which only mentioned the starting age, so the minimum age of 18, and did not mention any age or any maximum age. But we also see, for example, which is something natural and expected actually, that there is no clinical trial phase for the PubMed article because the PubMed article is not about a clinical trial. We see that conditions overlap, so both are referred to and talk about triple negative breast cancer neoplasms. But we also see that the disease stage is not overlapping. We are treating the TNBC during early stage, while the real world publication is about metastatic disease. And this also goes for inclusion and exclusion criteria. Here we have a selection of inclusion criteria, which is just for showcasing, but inclusion criteria can really mean anything depending on what the solution is designed for. So we see how many of them are overlapping and how many are non-overlapping or even missing. And this is very well plotted into these honeycomb or radar graph that is visually impactful in my opinion. You can see, for example, what I was talking about, data standardization, is also showcased here in the tumor stage, for example. Our very own design trial mentions CT2 and CT3, while the PubMed only mentions that as T1 and T2 and T3. So we know that the tumor stage from my design trial is included completely in the stage is completely included in that of the PubMed article. We also have exclusion criteria, which unfortunately are not available for the PubMed article. So we see that the PubMed article is lacking that information. And then we also have general parameters which are simply the metadata that are deemed not to be comparable, and for which we only have them for general information, of course. But say that you are now satisfied with your analysis of this single document and you want to compare it to something else. Instead of going back to the conversational UI, which is always an option for you, and ask for another comparison, but maybe it's with an ID that you have not experienced in the UI, so it was not a document that was retrieved for you. In this comparison UI, you can go to a step further to have all the documents in your database to be compared and have them available for you to select and then compare. So say that we want to compare our a single very own clinical trial with a different clinical trial. And here we see, of course, different data. We see that the clinical trial, this time, we see that the clinical trial phase is completely overlapping. So they're both phase 2 clinical trials. They have different endpoints, but for example, the pathological complete response is somewhat overlapping. We do not have the disease stage mentioned for the my target clinical trial, and then we also have inclusion and exclusion criteria for this one as well, which are very neatly displayed in the UI. So this is just a flavorful taste of what the solution, the bridge solution, can accomplish in accelerating how clinical trials and clinical trial insights can be gained from comparing a very large data set of documents together, so that evidence that our very own clinical trial can become better and evidence-based using real world data coming from the different sources of PubMed articles, of course. So Andrew, back to you, whether there is any questions.
Yeah, well, I've got a few here that just a few that I'd ask. So the first one I'd like to ask is around how does the solution ensure data privacy, regulatory compliance, and secure use of third-party AI models? How do?
Oh, okay. Well, that is a very interesting question, because it's somewhat a concern nowadays with the most recent technologies, but also in the health and pharma industry, mainly because data in this industry is very is subject to more data privacy than maybe other fields. The answer is that our platform is built with privacy and compliance at its core. Of course, for demonstration purposes, we only use public data, so clinical trials and Medline articles, and we ensure that there are no confidentiality concerns. However, for real-world applications, we have developed a proprietary orchestration framework that acts as a guardrail when integrating third-party AI models. This framework separates tasks from user-facing interactions, which serves two critical functions. On the one hand, it minimizes hallucinations and guarantees that sensitive data never leaves the client's secure infrastructure, and guarantees that it never leaves the client's secure infrastructure. These architectural separation allows structured and factual elements to be processed by deterministic systems. So the hybrid routing ensures that, for example, a large language model operates only within a controlled scope, maintaining both accuracy and security. Also, we are as a company, we are fully our solutions are fully aligned with major regulatory requirements, including GDPR, AI Act, ISO standards. Our system has been designed with auditability and transparency in mind, which is essential for sectors like healthcare and life science.
Okay, thanks. Another question is the platform adaptable to different therapeutic areas and capable of working with sensitive patient level data like EHRs?
Yes, of course. So what I have showcased today is just one use case that we can implement. It was about triple negative breast cancer, but it can be about anything that you're interested in. Our platform is highly adaptable to different therapeutic areas. While our current demonstration focused on the specific domain of triple negative breast cancer, the underlying data model and analytical workflows are designed to be therapeutic area agnostic. We already, I showed you the quick slide in my presentation that we cover an extensive data set through our very own database, and the solution is structured to ingest and curate new data efficiently. So when it comes to patient level data, such as electronic health records, we work closely with clients to ensure secure and compliant integration, but at the moment, we do not store any privacy sensitive documents like electronic health records, but we're willing to implement any electronic health records based solution and fine tune the models and the systems per client request.
Okay, thanks. So one more question maybe. So what's your approach apart from competitors, and why is it better suited for biomedical sort of applications and solutions?
Oh, yeah. That is also a very, very interesting question, mostly because technology is moving so fast today. And I think that what truly sets us apart is the hybrid AI architecture. The hybrid AI architecture combines the best of large language models, symbolic reasoning, and also, when needed, traditional rule-based systems. I think that unlike competitors that rely heavily on unstructured data ingestion and opaque model behaviors, expert.ai employs a deliberate orchestration strategy blending large language models for deep natural language understanding, neurosymbolic AI, which accounts for logical reasoning and semantic structuring, and then, when needed, supervised machine learning for efficient domain-specific automation. And I think that this approach enables expert.ai to build semantically rich knowledge bases that are continuously refined, and is used to enhance interpretation and decision making, of course. Our platform doesn't just provide answers, in my opinion. It offers transparent, explainable, and trustworthy insights that meet the rigorous standard of biomedical research. And this is particularly crucial when interpretability, compliance, and also domain fidelity are non-negotiables.
Okay, thanks. So one last question. What's the typical timeline from a proof of concept to the full-scale deployment?
Oh, yeah. That is a more, of course, a more business-related question, but the typical timeline. So we have streamlined our deployment processes based on experience with numerous clients in the biomedical sector. Typically, a proof of concept is implemented in around 4 weeks. I want to underline the fact that it's not just a generic demo. It's a fully functional instance of the solution that we develop, configured with the real use case and sample data that the client, the customer provides, which gives concrete evidence of the value that is delivered. On the other hand, for full-scale production deployments, timelines range from 16 weeks to 6 months, depending on the complexity of the infrastructure, the regulatory requirements, and of course, the scope of data integration.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Nicola.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for that webinar. So I'll just talk about the next webinar. So the final question was sort of a lead into the next webinar. Expert AI is in the process of developing sort of out-of-the-box AI solutions across sort of healthcare, insurance, banking, and a few other sort of industry sectors to deal with everything from email triage to claims processing to knowledge discovery and sort of clinical trials through. So if there's people in your organization interested in that, then the next webinar will be towards the end of July. And sort of finally, we're just really to say that if you want to find out more about Expert AI, feel free to contact me. My email's there, so expertai.au as a short and brief, but yeah, so give us a call and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar. I hope you find it interesting, and any feedback we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew.
See you all. Bye.
Bye.